Okay, so although I'm from okay, wait, no, 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 no. Hello, I'm Candice Bergens, and welcome to the very first episode of Mind Over Wonder. Woo, woo. Um, this is a series where I can ask about anything and everything while at the same time feeding my forever hunger for knowledge. I can give my take on a variety of topics and I can have maybe, host some friendly debates and maybe some interviews along the way. I don't know. That's just an idea that I have that I want. And yeah, I just hope you can join me. So I know is well, I'm gathering my thoughts. So interesting. So all I know is if you want to learn something new or at least pique your curiosity, then please join me in Mind Over Wonder. And I hope you enjoy this very first episode. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm gonna try to. I have a script that I wrote down. I'm gonna try to follow along, but at the same time, I'm gonna try to just try to loosen up throughout this series. I don't want to be so like straight. Like this is a script that I'm following. Bop 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 bop. But yeah, so just listen up. That one viewer that's listening. Okay, so although I'm familiar with the story of John Henry, I vaguely remember how it goes. Younger me got it mixed up with the tall tale of Paul Bunyan. He was this giant, along with his ox named Babe, who together went around cutting down trees and eating flapjacks. Flapjacks with maple syrup. Yeah. The giant guy, he had the flannel button down. Yeah, that Paul Bunyan. but but back to the point. I thought Paul. I got it mixed. So I got those two mixed up, Paul and John Henry, because younger me thought Paul was black because he and John Henry were both depicted as these larger than life heroes, and my childlike brain at the time was like, yeah, big equals big equals giant black man. But in my defense, in my defense, like honestly, Paul Bunyan's story and John Henry's story, those two, when I was doing research, those two stories always came up. Like it was like if I look at Paul Bunyan, John Henry show up. His story. If I was doing when I was doing research for John Henry, Paul Bunyan's story will come up. So those two tales are always side by side, which just kind of I feel like I should definitely do a story of Paul Bunyan next. That's just like I feel like that's an indicator. But back to the point. So I can't remember why or how I rediscovered the story of John Henry, but I'm glad I did because although it's a somber one, it's a potent depiction of black strength and resilience. Um, but I couldn't help but wonder. Sorry about all the uhs, but I really couldn't help but wondered if John Henry was an actual person or like another colorful character in a tall tale. This is Mind Over Wonder, Episode 1, The Legend of John Henry. The story. It's the year 1878, 1878, and this is exactly 1 year after the Confederacy. I'm sorry, this is exactly 1 year after the Reconstruction era. And this is the time where the Confederacy is trying to rebuild after losing the Civil War years prior. So they're trying to rebuild the South, at the same time they just rejoined the nation. And so the South is trying to rebuild themselves. And more importantly, abolished slaves were now allowed to get an education, run for political roles, and enter the workforce. But mind you, these were under unbearable conditions and being grossly underpaid. But, you know, little pay equals no pay at all, right? So with that mindset, a lot of African Americans headed to West Virginia to work on the railroads. Okay, so just like a quick, I'm gonna try to describe what workers did at the railroads. Okay, and I don't want to say railroad so much. That is like so hard to say, but you guys, okay, bear with me. So what workers do at the railroad? There would be a shaker, and there's two. There's I mean there's plenty of things, but there are two people, right, amongst everyone else. So the shaker, he was not a shaker. It wasn't a shaker. Okay, there was not a shaker. It was a hammerhead slash steel driver. And what they will do, they will like they will get a rock. They'll get like the steel metal thing. I don't know, like a steel stick, and they were driving into the. They were like drive into a rock, and they get the hammer and like they'll beat the rock, right? Like bang, bang, bang. With the so they're trying to basically put like a hole into the stone, right? So that was a shape. That was a hammerhead slash aka steel driver, right? Creating holes with their hammer and steel stick, right? And then you had the turner slash shaker. That's where the shaker came from. The shaker would be the one to like turn the steel, the little steel head, I guess. So like the shaker like would just like so once the hammerhead like will hit the steel drive, the little steel into the rock, the shaker will come and like turn it. Right? Does that make sense? Or turn like the turner, shaker, turner, like it's the same thing, but basically just that makes sense, right? So you got the steel guy, boom, 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 banging the steel stick into the stone. The turner slash shaker guy will come in and turn like this still drive, kind of creating a bigger hole, I guess. Don't quote me, guys. Like, I was trying to figure this out. But yeah, so that was one of the main working roles, right, of a railroad worker. But also, that was like the minimum work, all right? People died from explosions, trying to like blow up rocks to create paths and like people would die from like exhaustion. People would die from like too much like dust and smoke inhalation. People would die from cave collapses. Like work on the railroad was something else. It was a whole other level. So yes, all right. But that was work. Okay, so that's what they're doing in Virginia, right? They're worker. They're working away. They're just they're laying out paths, setting tracks down, and making their way across Virginia. Okay. Then, on a particular afternoon, workers were taking a break from chipping away at Big Ben. Nope, that's not it. No, no, they're laying down tracks. Okay. They're making their paths across Virginia. And then they come across Big Ben. Big Ben is this huge stone that workers just couldn't get around, or like they it was just they couldn't get around no matter which direction. Obviously they couldn't go over it, and they had no choice but to literally just, yeah, we had to go through it. They just had to go, not we, girl. But they had to go through it, okay? But it's just so thick, so they just had to just continue to just chip away, right? And it was tedious, it was draining, it slowed down work tremendously, but it had to be done. So they started chipping away at Big Ben, right? They're chipping away. Now, on this particular afternoon, workers are taking a break from Big Ben, from chipping away at it, and it's like this sunny afternoon. They're taking a break. They're all just, some are taking a nap, some are catching up on their sleep, some are catching up with each other, making small talk. Some are just kind of like, everyone's just resting. Okay, I'm trying to paint the idea. They're not thinking about work. All right, they're just relaxing. Then walk like in like not in, but here comes this this sharp dress salesman, like hauling this clunky machine with him, like making a lot of noise. He walks up to the work site, and he's gathering, and he's like, everyone's like, he's catching everyone's attention. They're like, who's this guy? What is he doing? What is that? What is this? What is this machine? What is this? What is that? Is that a machine? Like, what is it? Right? And so he's like catching everyone's attention. And he's like, come on, everyone, gather around. The salesman's like, gather around, come on, everyone. Like, I got something to show you. I got something to pitch to you, to sell to you. You're gonna love it. Well, the majority of you is not gonna love it, but I know some people's gonna love this. All right. So he has this machine, and he tells everyone once they're all gathered around, he's like, heads up. Okay, I got this revolutionary machine called the steel, what's it? The steam powered drill. All right. And this steam powered drill can do the work of like all of you. Right? It's gonna put y'all all to rest. I don't, we, it's not gonna. We don't. We're not gonna need you guys anymore. This machine can cut through this rock, this big bend thing that you're stuck on. Yeah, it can cut through that with ease. And all the workers are like, "What? Like, why are you telling us this? We don't want to hear this. Why are you selling us a machine that can like put us out of a job, right?" So the salesman's just going on and on. And as he's continued to like praise this machine that can do the work of all the railroad workers or like rail workers, he's going on and everyone else is just like, yeah, no, we don't want this. Like this isn't. Everyone's just kind of nervous now. Like their anxiety's building up. They're just like, wait, like what does that mean for us? What does that mean for work on the railroad system? What does that like? What's gonna happen? We're gonna lose a job. Like even though their job was extremely dangerous, it was a job nevertheless, right? So everyone's just buzzing with uncertainty about this salesman, about this machine, this revolutionary machine, right? So everyone's just kind of, oh, like I don't know about this. Like, oh my god, like should we be worried? Like this can do our job. Like what's gonna? Like, everyone's just buzzing, right? It's just a lot of buzz, and a lot of just like anxious, like this little anxiety. I was gonna say this anxious, yeah, anxious feeling, right? Yeah, but okay. Enter John Henry. Okay, John Henry was the 6'2", 150-pound giant, right? And he was. They say he was born with a hammer in his hand, right? Okay, that's cute. That's very. Yeah, they say he was born with a hammer in his hand, and he can do the job of 10 men. Now, this claim of this revolutionary machine prompted Henry to a challenge, okay? Me versus it. Man versus machine. And so everyone's like, yeah. I mean, the salesman's like, yeah, okay, let's do this. Like, yeah. This is a good salesman. This is going to prove to me, y'all, that this machine can do better than y'all. So everyone's in, right? So like it's the machine, they put the machine up against the wall, and John Henry has like his hammer, both his hammers in his hand, right? And at the sound of the starting pistol, the race is on. Okay. Pow. The race is on, right? The machine, although it was janky, was drilling through the stone with ease. I don't know how it sounds, but it's like janky, right? It's like, but it's cutting through, right? It's working. Okay. No, you can't say it wasn't working because it was working. But however, Henry, with his trusty hammers firmly gripped, was delivering powerful blows. Boom, boom, like bang. Would it be bang? Boom, bang, clink, clink, just like one after the other, right? He's cutting through that stone like paper. Bam, 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 bam. Just boom, boom. I don't know how blows sound. Bam, wham. I don't know. But yeah, you get the idea, right? So he's cutting through with ease, just as fast as the machine. And the workers are just they're cheering Henry on, right? They're just like, "Go Henry, come on Henry, we don't want to lose our job. Beat this machine." So they're like, "Yeah, Henry, go 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 go." All right. Then about a half an hour later, the dust that filled the air and blanket surroundings it all settled, and this is like a signal that the race was over. So all right, so it's over. The machine got turned off. Whatever you want to, I don't know, switch on, off. The machine's like over there. John is like, "Whew, I'm exhausted, but I did it." Right. So everyone's like, gather around. They go and expect the machine. So right, they gather around and they look at the machine's job. Right. So they're like, okay, all right, not bad. This is a one. The machine had created a 1 9-foot-inch hole, right? 9 foot feet. Let me see. Let me do a little fact check, y'all, to Give me don't give me the line. Okay, so the drill had created a 9-foot hole through Big Ben, right? So everyone's like, "Oh my god, like oh," and the workers are like, "Oh my god, like yeah, okay, it did it, like it did the job." So everyone's just like, "Okay, but what about John Henry?" So everyone goes and inspects John Henry, and what did they see? The men are at all. They're just like, "Oh my goodness," because what they were staring at was a hole of 14 feet. All right, that is 7 feet for each hand, respectfully. And everyone's just like, oh, we know who the winner is. All right, it's John Henry. And the crowd, right, the workers just like break out into a roar. Whoa, John Henry! John Henry, 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 Henry. I'm supposed to switch from like John and Henry. I'm talking about the same person, y'all, John Henry. But everyone's like, Henry, the winner. Yeah, like, woo, like this machine is not gonna take our jobs, okay? Like, okay. So everyone's just like cheering. And they're cheering and they're looking at the holes of both the machine and John Henry. Sorry if my hand's like kind of getting in front of my I should stop like waving my hand in front of my mouth. But so everyone's just cheering, right? Henry has won. Clearly just like and also at the same time people are just like at awe of what John Henry was able to do. And so but and they get to keep their job, all right? They're not going anywhere anytime soon. The machine's not going to be replacing them. So they're just cheering, celebrating. And then they kind of realize after celebrating for some time, they start to realize, okay, like where's John? He's not here celebrating with us. Where can he be? Like John. And they scan the area, all right? They scan the land, and out in the distance, like they see John staggering off, like just kind of hunched over. And then they see they see him drop one of his hammers. And they're like, oh. And then he himself drops and he collapses on the ground, creating this huge crash, right? It was so loud that they said that the birds around all scattered. He crashes. And the workers are like, John, John. And they race towards him. They are running, just shouting his name, John, John, John. By the time they get to him, though, it was too late. And there lied John Henry, or late, there lay John Henry with a smile on his face and a hammer in his hand. The end. Hmm, my God. Okay, but that is the story of John Henry. And there's so many other ways that the story was told. Trust me. Like I said, I was winging it. Also, not really winging it, but trying to like also like kind of put my spin on it. This tall tale, but no, that's the story of John Henry. Now, the question or the wonder I had was, is John Henry based on an actual person? And from what I gathered, the answer was, drum roll please. Yes, like, yeah. So now there's so many components surrounding John Henry's story that's been the subject of debate. What is fact or fiction? And trying to fit them all in is quite overwhelming, even for me. So I'm going to lean on historian Scott Reynolds Nelson's book, Still Driven Man, John Henry, for reference. All right. So I'm going to lean on him when I was as I'm doing my fact check or I'm leaning on this book, right, for reference. Okay, so what Scott had discovered was prison records at the Virginia Penitentiary, or I'm going to say prison, of a 19-year-old African American inmate named John Henry, also referred to John Williams Henry. Okay, now after the Civil War, there was a lot of wreckage and damage to the property. So during this time, Virginia prison was leasing out inmates to contractors for labor, right? Okay, so from like the prison to the workforce, it was just pretty much a tunnel. Right? So they were just people, so contractors, companies, I don't know, but they were just pretty much like leasing out these workers for pretty much free labor. I mean, they're getting paid, but that's still up to debate. But so it's this tunnel from the prison to the workforce. And Virginia, the prison that John Henry Williams was staying at was John Williams Henry. I'm sorry, was staying at was one of those labor to workforce tunnels, right? So it was during this time that John Henry was part of the first group of contractors that was leased by the C&O Railway. All right. And as for the contest, Nelson found that the contest could have been taking place in Milboro. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Milboro, Virginia, at the Lewis Tunnel, just 40 miles from the Big Bend Tunnel. Okay. And workers from the Lewis Tunnel, they did work with steam drivers. Sorry, yeah, they worked with steam drills or steam drivers. So it was workers and steam drivers. They're working side by side. So yeah, most likely the contest took place there and not the Big Bend Tunnel. Nelson also indicated that John and many laborers could have most likely died of silicosis, that is a lung fibrosis caused by the inhalation of dust containing silica. And that could have been done by the dust at the blast sites of where the rail where they were laying out tracks and pathways at the work sites. All right. Also, Nelson pointed out that John Henry's body could have been buried in a ditch behind the Virginia prison, just like the song ballad alluded to. The lyric says, "The White House in the sand, somewhere that the locomotives roar." So sorry, I forgot to quote that, but that was part of that's part of the lyrics. There's also photo proof indicating that the prison was painted white and back just like the song said, quote, the so-called White House, end quote. Photos also shows numerous unmarked graves. And last but not least, the prison records for John Williams Henry stopped in 1873, indicating that he was not returning and most likely died. So yes, unfortunately, but very interesting. So for the story that surrounds John Henry, it varies from workers to workers across the coast, as it was mostly told through ballads and work songs, which brings us to several adaptations. Disney did adapt the legend of John Henry for their animated movie Disney American Legends. I personally think this Disney's version is super sweet. It shows John's wife and child, which some historians say that he did leave behind a wife and child. So, and I am so I think that's very sweet. Even though I feel like Disney would have like included a child and a wife to be even more family friendly, but that's just my opinion. But so back to the thing. So in the closing scene of his story of his film, you Henry has passed, right? And we see a storm outside of the family's home. His young son is scared of the thunder, in which Henry's wife, Polly, comforts him, and she assures him that, quote, "to not be afraid of the thunder, for that is the sound of his father's hammering in the sky," end quote. And the camera pans up to the heavens where we see a silhouette of John Henry bringing down his hammer and creating thunder, right? And I'm just like, that is the cutest freaking scene. I'm just like, oh, it's so sweet because it just shows how powerful Henry was, just not on Earth but in the heavens as well. So I was just like, oh, I love it, like absolutely, absolutely sweet, just so cute. That was Disney's American Legends. Okay, and also in 1946, Hungarian American animator George Powell wrote and directed a stop motion of the folklore called John Henry and the Inky Pooh as part of the theatrical stop motion of his theatrical stop motion Puppetoon series. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So, and Ebony magazine praised the film, stating, "quote, John Henry, as the first Hollywood film to feature African American folklore in a positive light and to treat its characters with dignity, imagination, poetry, and love. End quote. The film was also nominated for an Oscar for Best Animated Short, and in 2015, the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress selected the rhetorical film for preservation as being quote culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. End quote. Now, in television, in Shelley Duvall's Tall Tales and Legends TV series, John Henry was played by Danny Glover from 1985 to 1987. There are so many more portrayals and adaptations, and feel free to explore on your own because his story has been celebrated through all platforms. And this comes to our final thoughts. In conclusion, not only was John Henry an actual person, but he was a symbol of many African Americans who were exploited for cheap labor, as many lost their lives building and maintaining the railroads. Philosopher Jeanette Bickle, Beckel, I hope I pronounced that correctly, had this to say about the folklore. Quote, John Henry is a symbol of physical strength and endurance, of exploited labor, of the dignity of a human being against the degradations of the machine age, and of racial pride and solidarity. During World War II, his image was used in U.S. government propaganda as a symbol of social tolerance and diversity. End quote. In Talcott, Virginia, I believe that's how you pronounce it, near the entrance to the Big Bend Railroad Tunnel, there's a statue of John Henry called the John Henry Monument. And there's even talk that if one is lucky enough, if you stand near the entrance of the opening, you can hear the workers singing the song of the legend of John Henry. This old hammer killed John Henry, but it won't kill me. It won't kill me. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone. Tell him I'm gone. Whatever John Henry meant or has come to mean, his legend has preserved. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to continue to learn, then please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the series. See you next time. And remember, don't let your mind wander too far.